Welcome everyone to the x86 Assembly Hobby channel. In this very first video, let me explain what this channel is all about. Firstly, it obviously involves writing assembly code as a hobby. But surely, a hobby infers fun. Where's the fun in writing assembly code, one might ask? Actually, the satisfaction comes from writing standalone Linux executables that run in the terminal. No dependencies or libraries required. And this is in stark contrast to writing in C or C++. In fact, in the next few videos, I'll be showing you how to write micro-ELF executables. More on this later. Knowledge of register values at each step of the assembly script helps in achieving this. Also, the executable and linkage format, or ELF header, will be created using only the executable portion. This will be achieved using our own template and does not require a linker. Apart from a text editor, only the Nasm assembler will be used, a two-step process. However, the editor used in these videos will be one specifically designed to help, called Edlinpro. More on this later. In later videos, you'll be encouraged to create your own suggested apps. To help clarify this, let me list the main objectives of this channel. Okay, let's go through some of the objectives of the channel, starting with I wish to show how we can make standalone micro-ELF executables. Now, what is a micro-ELF executable? Basically, it's an ELF executable to be run under Linux, and micro-ELF meaning with the minimum of overheads. Basically a very, very simple way of making an executable. As we'll see later when we use the editor and start actually making some of these executables, you'll see that minimum amount of overhead is needed. Of course, we're only going to be using these in the x86 assembly language, so why x86? And indeed 32-bit x86, but nevertheless x86 is, in my opinion, the ideal assembly language because it's more or less halfway there to a high-level language, being a complex instruction set, a couple of instructions and you can achieve a great deal. Comparing that with a RISC processor where it is a real pain to write any amount of assembly language. Obviously designed for running in Linux and a minimum of software tools. In fact, the tools required are the Edlinpro editor and the Nasm assembler. And you'll notice when we use the Nasm assembler, we'll be using the fbin switch, which means we're assembling binary files directly without any linkage. We don't need a linker. We will not use a linker to make things fast and but complete. I mean, whatever you can do with any other script, you can do with this. No problem at all. We will also be using some Edlinpro add-ons to help us achieve this. First of all, a template, a breakpoint. These are extra scripts that will be provided with Edlinpro. And I'll include a link in the description to the channel's Google Drive, enabling you to download the following four files. First of all, the Edlinpro editor. Then the template, breakpoint script, and the Edlinpro manual, quite important. Notice I will not include in this first video the Edlinpro script, the source file. That will be coming in a later video. Because Edlinpro is actually also a micro-ELF executable. What we're not covering here, we won't be covering x86 assembly tutorial, or the Nasm tutorial. You have to find, which is quite common on the YouTube or books available, or web pages available for x86 assembly language tutorials and Nasm tutorials. Don't need much of the Nasm, we're only going to use a small part of it. However, once you get used to the Nasm syntax, as I'll explain, in these videos we're going to use the Intel syntax, which is used by Nasm, and we're going to use the semicolon for comments, which again is used by Nasm, and we're going to use maximum of 15 characters labels, maximum label size of 15 characters. Now this is not an absolute, but it's an Edlinpro restriction if you wish to contain labels and instructions and comments on one line. I certainly will encourage you to use 15 character labels. I will be using uppercase letters for the x86 instructions. I'm sure the purists amongst you will not like that, but that's the way I've got used to it. Of course, labels will be a mixture of upper and lowercase, and of course comments in lowercase mainly. I'll be using comment ellipses. More about this when we do the actual demonstrations. You'll be able to see what we mean by that. Again, my preference. Basically, any editor, you don't even have to use Edlinpro, any editor can be used to assemble a script that you can present to Nasm for assembly. But I want to explain why I'm using Edlinpro and why I think that is our best choice. Okay, first of all I'm going to demonstrate the use of Edlinpro, which is the editor we're going to use throughout the videos, and why I think it's the best editor for our purpose. So the first thing we do, open a terminal and type in Edlinpro. Okay, and I think it's a good time to demonstrate the error handling of Edlinpro. If Edlinpro runs correctly, it will open up the editor. If there is an error, then Edlinpro will simply terminate without doing anything. This is opposite to most Linux executables, which if they terminate without anything printed, it usually means it's terminated without error. Complete opposite with Edlinpro. For example, now if I press enter, it terminates without doing anything. In Edlinpro this demonstrates there's an error. Now what is the error? Well, we can find the error by simply typing echo $, and we see that the error is number 1. And if you look in the manual, number 1 means that no file name has been provided, no text file name. There's nothing for Edlinpro to work on. Now, it's important to understand Edlinpro will not create a file. Even if you have an empty file, you must present a name of a file to Edlinpro for it to work. So, if you wish to use touch or some other means of creating an empty file, do that, and Edlinpro will launch, no problem. But without the file name, you get an error 1. Okay, let's continue. In this example, I've got a file here called example.asm, which is a script which I've written just for an example purposes to test Edlinpro on. Now you'll notice the extension .asm. This is not necessary, it's just a personal use of the file name for myself to show me that it is actually an assembly module text file. Any text file will do, and indeed any it does not have to have the ASM after it. Now for demonstration purposes I'm just going to misspell this name of the file to indicate another example of an error. For example, I've got example.asm. Let me just change that to example.as. which I know that doesn't exist. When I press enter, again it's an error. We can see it's an error, so let's see if I can find out what the error is. And we see the error is 254. If you look in the manual, 254 means file not found. The file has not been found. Okay, so now we give you an idea. There are other errors, of course, that can happen, such as wrong permissions, or not read-only, or whatever. However, in this case, file not found, because we don't have an AS file, a .as file. Okay, enough of that. Let's continue. Okay, now after correctly spelling the file name, you'll notice I've got two other example files here, which I know I have in the home folder. Example 2 and example 3. Now these are optional, you don't have to use them. These are the names of any other files you wish to include with your Edlinpro execution. What basically happens is it enables you, as we'll see later, can't demonstrate it just now, but later when we use Edlinpro, that we can call on these two files to copy and paste from. So in Edlinpro, if you wish to copy any sections of a file, an existing file, and paste it into your current file, which in this case would be example.asm, you have to include the names of the files in the command line, on the command line when you invoke it, as I've done here as an example. You can have up to 32 of these, incidentally. However, although I'm including it here for completeness, at the beginning we won't be using these straight away. Later in the demonstration I'll show you how we use them and how we can copy and paste from them. Okay, let's press enter. Okay, now if you look here, you will see that we have a little indicator code which is simply just 107, less than 107, right in the top left hand corner of the screen. Otherwise the screen is blank. What's this all about? We're still not running our executable? Well, yes we are, it is running, but it will not run correctly. It will not run correctly with less than 107 character wide terminal screen. If we have a look at this terminal screen, we see that it is only 80 characters. Only 80 characters wide. Well, it won't run with less than 107 characters. The reason for the 107 you will see later, but it will not run. There is a minimum line width of 107 characters. That's the total width for the terminal. So normally you would use a terminal with a setting of 107 character width, and then you wouldn't get this error. It's simple enough to cure. All I have to do is go to the terminal width and increase it to 107. There you go, 107. There you go. If you do more than 107, let's get rid of this. If you do more than 107, then it just means that this area here is blank. That's all. Just get a blank area there. However, let's just set it at 107 so that we're okay. Okay, 107. Okay, so it will not run unless you have this 107 character width for your terminal. As I say, normally you would set up the terminal to have 107. Let me just demonstrate a few points about this, what we have here. First of all, you'll notice at the top here we have a header, blue header. I'll explain more about the header as we go along, but that's always there, always at the top of the terminal. The second thing you'll notice is here we have a highlighted line number. Line number 1 is highlighted. You'll also see on line number 1 the cursor. This is here, the cursor. Now you can change the cursor by changing from insert to overwrite. There's overwrite mode, insert mode. This is pretty normal for most editors. But the most important thing about the editor here in Edlinpro is the fact that the current line that you're working on, since this is a line editor, is highlighted. And it's highlighted by highlighting the line number. So line number 1 is highlighted, meaning that is where our cursor is. The second thing you'll notice is that it is always in the middle of the terminal screen. Always in the middle of the terminal screen. So even if I was to change the size of the terminal, which you can change without error, there's no limit on this, as there is in the width. I can increase the number of. Let me just do this. I can increase the number of lines as much as I want, no problem. But it's always in the center. Now this has one or two effects. The first thing is, of course, if I want to change to edit a different line number, I simply press the up and down arrow key. In this case, if I press the down arrow key, I will move the highlighted number to the next number down, going to higher numbers. However, since the current line is always in the center of the screen, as I go to higher line numbers, what actually happens is the text itself, the script, will scroll up. It does the complete opposite. That scrolls up. And if I press the up arrow key to get to lower line numbers, the script will scroll down. For example, if I go to the end of the script, like that, that's the end of the script. Well, you can see again the current line number is always in the middle of the screen. We just get a blank after that. Or if I go to the beginning, we just get a blank at the top. This is important. I always want to keep the current line in the middle of the screen. So no matter how we type, how we enter our data, the line number is always in the middle of the screen. Now, I'll go into more detail about the blue heading as we go along, as I demonstrate each part or each function that Edlinpro provides. Okay, in order to do this, I'll just increase the size of the fonts so that we get a clearer picture. I'm going to increase the size of the font and make it a little bit easier to follow as I go through the different options and functions of Edlinpro. Okay, the first thing we're going to look at is the blue header at the top there, in particular the first two sections. The first field is the version, the year, month, date and then size of the binary file in bytes. This is automatically compiled by Nasm at assembly time. The next field shows how to display the key combos of all special function keys. Pressing escape displays all the alpha keys modified by the Alt key. Note, the Alt modifier uses the hat symbol. Do not confuse this for the Control modifier. Demo. Escape. 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 It's a total action. Escape on. Escape off. The prompt always appears at the bottom of your screen. Now let's look and go through the special function key combos, starting with the mode selector, which is Alt-M. There are two modes, Edlinpro and Linear. Pressing Alt-M switches between them. Note that in Edlinpro mode, the line number is highlighted. This is the default mode. Demo. Alt-M. 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 Switches between the two modes. That's the indicator of which mode you're in. To understand the difference between the modes, you must understand how an edit line is divided. The numbers are in character columns. For instance, 5, 102. The first 5 character columns are for the line number, which is 4 character columns, and the gutter, which is 1 character column. This is explained later what the gutter is. The remaining 102 lines, which is the maximum, is submitted to Nasm for assembly. However, in Edlinpro mode, the line is divided further. Mandatory 16 character columns for a label, and then 86 character columns for instruction and comment, depending on the position of the semicolon. I will demonstrate typing and how the home and end keys behave in the two different modes. Demo. Alt-M. Linear mode. Typing. First of all, I'll switch to insert mode, and you can see that works as expected. Delete. As expected. Home, as expected. End, as expected. Home, end. Now I'll press Alt-M and go to a different line, and now we'll have a look at the operation of typing when you're in the Edlinpro mode. Typing, deleting. Notice only the instruction column is affected. Similarly, if we go to the comments column, typing, deleting. And of course the same with the, no matter where you are, with the labels column, typing, deleting. Now home and end in the labels column. Home, end. If I move to the instruction column, home, end, home, end. No matter where you are in that column, home, end. And finally the column holding the comments. End, home, end, home. So the home and end keys behave slightly differently in the Edlinpro mode. The other key affected by the mode is the enter key. Most of the time, enter inserts a new blank line under the current line. However, the final position of the cursor depends on its position when enter is pressed. Note, enter does not split lines, as in most editors. Demo. First of all, in Alt-M in linear mode, pressing enter no matter where you are on the line brings the cursor to the start of that line. So you can be anywhere at all along the line, no line splitting, simply places a blank line beneath the current line. Switching modes, to Edlinpro mode, we can see that things behave a little differently. If I'm in the labels field, pressing enter, go to the start of the labels field. If I'm in the instruction field, pressing enter, start of instruction field, no matter where we are in that field. And finally, in the comments field, when it's by itself like this, pressing enter, start of instruction field. Now also, when you're in Edlinpro mode, pressing home takes you to the start of the field. But if you press home again and it already is in the home, it'll take you to the start of the following field. So here you can see I'm already in the home position of the comments field, so when I press it, it takes to the start of the label field. If I'm not in the home position, the first thing it does takes you to the home. But press it again, takes you to the start of the following field. So constantly pressing home will enable you to switch quickly between fields. Again, this only happens in the Edlinpro mode. If I switch to linear mode, pressing home, no matter how many times you press it, it will just go to the home or beginning of the line. Now, this might seem a little confusing at first, but enter can behave quite differently if in the comments column. When a list of instructions has been typed and then you wish to add comments, the enter key does not insert another blank line. Demo. Here I've placed the cursor in the comments column and we have a contiguous block of instructions. So when I press enter, I made a mistake there, of course. It has to be in only in Edlinpro mode. So let's go back to Edlinpro mode. So when I press enter, it goes to the beginning of the following line, which is expected, beginning of the comments of the following line, but without inserting a line. Just goes down to the beginning. Now, this of course depends on where you place your semicolon. So if I press enter now, after typing some extra, it goes to the beginning of the column for that particular line. Okay? So it does behave differently if you've already completed a block of code and you wish to add comments later. Much easier without inserting extra blanks which you're going to have to delete anyway. Okay, the next function, Alt-D, deletes the current line from the script regardless of the horizontal cursor position. The function Alt-E restores lines deleted by Alt-D. Alt-E can also be used to restore lines that have been edited. Alt-E is only available if the cursor, the current line, has not changed after making changes on the line. Okay, let's demo this. Alt-D, 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 Alt-D. Alt-E, 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 Alt-E. So Alt-E reverses what Alt-D does. Now, if we go to a different line, for example down here, and let us just do some changes along that line, all the ridiculous changes, and say, oops, sorry, I didn't want to do that, then pressing Alt-E will restore the line. Now we'll cover the token functions, Alt-T, Alt-G, Alt-U and Alt-V. The current token is displayed in the header and can be changed by the Alt-T function. I'll demonstrate that. Okay, Alt-T. You notice where the arrow is pointing that we changed the symbol. That is the token. Okay, exclamation mark, patch, dollar, line. So we can choose the token there. We have 4 tokens to choose from. The purpose of placing these tokens in the gutter is to quickly jump to a token line from anywhere else in the script. The Alt-V and Alt-U functions do just this. Alt-U scans up and Alt-V scans down the script, looking for the gutter with that token in it. Demo. Okay, let's move to a line, let's say line number 10, and now I'm going to press Alt-G, and you'll notice the token goes on that line. Let's choose another line, let's say line 50, Alt-G, and so on. 110, Alt-G. Alt-G is a toggle action. It will switch on and off. Now let's try looking for these lines in order. First of all, Alt-U for up. Go to line 50. Up again, line 10. If we go down, Alt-V, line 50, line 110. And so on. So it's quite straightforward. You can place the token on the line and then jump to it at a later time when you need to. This is very, very handy for debugging purposes. The exclamation mark and patch are tokens that are generally general purpose tokens. They're the ones we would normally use for this purpose. The dash token has a special function by also inserting a commented broken line. Unlike the general purpose functions, it is not a toggle action. It can only be removed by deleting it. Demo. Let's demonstrate that. For example, if I want to put a broken line here, I press, first of all I'll need to select the broken line, so I do Alt-T until the line is selected, then do Alt-G. Now not only does it put the token in the gutter, it also adds a broken line to the script. This is handy if you wish to split the script up into parts. I don't know, whatever you wish to call these parts. And I put it in a bad place, but you can see what the whole idea is. Now normally when you press Alt-G again for that token, it will erase it, make it disappear. But for the line, you cannot do that. If you press Alt-G again, it just puts another line in. So the only way to do that is to erase the line, which we already know about. We can do that with Alt-D. Okay. Whenever an Edlinpro script is saved to disk, it appends an extra line at the end. This line starts with a semicolon, followed by 3 colons, followed by a list of all tokens and line numbers used in the script. When launching Edlinpro, it uses this line to restore the tokens in the gutter. The tokens are therefore preserved in the script. This is known as persistence. We cannot, of course, leave the tokens in the gutter because Nasm will not accept that. So this is the way that Edlinpro achieves persistence of the tokens. Now we're going to talk about the cut and paste function in Edlinpro. The cut and paste function in Edlinpro works on whole lines. You cannot cut and paste part of a line or any block of characters. You've got to do a whole line at a time. Alt-C removes the cursor line and places it in the Edlinpro clipboard buffer. The cursor then moves to the next line. Edlinpro has its own clipboard buffer, not to be confused with the clipboard of the operating system. Note the buffer line counter in the header shows how many lines are in the buffer at any given time. At the moment the count is 0, there are no lines in the buffer. Let me demonstrate that first. Okay, now I'm going to press Alt-C. 3, 4, 5. I've put 5 lines in the buffer, as you can see, and they've been taken from the script. Alt-P copies the last line in the buffer and inserts it at the current cursor line position. Note the change in the header buffer count when using Alt-C and Alt-P. Again, I'll demonstrate that. First of all, Alt-P puts the last line, and notice the count goes 3, 2, 1, complete. No lines are now in the buffer, all lines have been placed back where they started with Alt-P. The main use of Alt-P is if you want to get a group of lines. For example, here I want this first group of lines. I use Alt-C to put that group into the buffer, but I make a mistake. Oh, I've pressed two lines too many, so I'll just use Alt-P to restore those last 2 lines. I only wanted the first 5 lines. I didn't really want to any more. The function Alt-A is used to copy all lines from the buffer without removing them from the buffer. This function can therefore be used to repeat paste the same 5 lines in our example here, or to copy lines to the buffer instead of just cutting. Okay, let me demonstrate that. Now if I'm going to press Alt-A here, I've got 5 lines in the buffer and they will all be placed back into the script when I press Alt-A. There you go, they're all being placed back, but they're still in the buffer. It only copies from the buffer, so if I continue doing that, it will continue putting those same 5 lines, or I can place them anywhere I wish, of course. Put them down here if I wish. Alt-A, all 5 lines, all the 5 lines go there. Making a bit of a mess of my thing, but there we go. Now moving the cursor to a different position resets the counter, and now if I start pressing Alt-C, I begin with 1 again, and so on. Now this is useful. By pressing Alt-A, I return those lines exactly as they were, but they're now copied into the buffer. So this is like, instead of using a copy function, it is actually a cut and then paste back again function. That's the second use of Alt-A. Okay, now we're going to talk about the find and replace function of Edlinpro. To enter the find function, the find editor, you need to press Alt-F, and then you should notice when you do this, in my demonstration later, that the header color changes to red and a cursor appears. This is a toggle action. After typing the character string you wish to be found, Alt-N finds the next and Alt-L finds the last occurrence of the string. In this demo I will use the string semicolon and 3 periods, which is common in all my scripts. Okay, let me do the demo. First of all, Alt-F. Notice the red header and the cursor appears there. As I say, it's a toggle action. If you were to press Alt-F again, you remove that. There, remove, there. Okay, now let me just demonstrate it by typing semicolon and 3 periods. Okay, now if I press Alt-N for next, next, you can see it lands on that particular string. If I press Alt-L, the last one, and so on and so forth. So it's very, very simple, very straightforward. Okay, to use the replace function, you have to place a hat after the find string, then type the replace string. I'll demonstrate this in a minute. After finding the string, an asterisk will be inserted, activating the replace function. Demo. Okay, Alt F. Okay, that's where we left it off. Now if I press Shift 6, put that top hat there. Now I want to give a string to replace that string. I'll just make up a string 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't really matter. Now when I press Alt N for next, notice that an asterisk appears at the beginning of the string in the header. Now if you wish, you can ignore this, just go to the next one or to the last one. But whilst that asterisk is there, it activates another key, which is Alt R, the replace key. So if I press Alt R now, it replaces that string in the text with the string I wish after the top hat. So we can do and replace. There's no bulk replace, I'm afraid, nothing like that. It has to be done one at a time. I found this is more safer than bulk replacements. So if I press Alt N followed by Alt R, Alt N followed by Alt R, so on and so forth. So that's how you can replace a string. Finally, there is Alt O, which enables you to copy from the script to the find buffer. Now of course this depends on what you wish to do as to how useful it is. I find this exceptionally useful, one of the most useful features of the find function. If the header is blue, then Alt O copies all the characters from the current cursor position in the text up to the next space in the script. If the header is red, it copies just one character at a time to the find buffer. This means if the cursor is blue, you're not in the find edit mode, but if the cursor is red, you are in the find edit mode. Let me demonstrate that. First of all, I'm going to press Alt F to enter the red mode or the header mode, and I'll use backspace to get rid of what I was talking about last time. Not interested in that now, I want to begin fresh. And I'm going to press Alt O. Now look what's happening. One character at a time is transferred from the script to the find buffer. This mainly is useful for copying perhaps labels that you want to find. Copy a label. But there are other ways in which you can do this. Let me delete that by pressing backspace while I'm in the red, and then I'll leave that for a moment. Alt F, back to blue. Now I can position my cursor somewhere else. Now let's say I put it here. It doesn't really matter where I put it. Well, I put it here, no matter where I put it. Now what happens when I press Alt O? Alt O presses wherever the cursor is pointing, the whole of the next section of characters is transferred to the header. In this case, the word program is transferred to the header. Now if I then went on to press Alt N or Alt L, it will try and look for, which it did, look for words program. So this is a very useful function, Alt-O, used in the search and replace. The Alt-F function searches only the script submitted to Nasm. It does not include the line number or gutter. When developing a script, Nasm will often issue an error message indicating the line number of the error. It's therefore handy with large scripts having thousands of lines to quickly find the offending line. The Alt-F function enables you to jump to any line quickly, as follows. Press Alt-F, enter the line number in the red box, press enter, and it will jump to that line number. Let me demo this. Okay, first of all, Alt-F, there's our red top. Then I'll type in a line number, well, let me say 324. It's an arbitrary number. 324. Press enter. And there we go. It goes immediately 324. You will also notice that it disappears from the header. It's a very temporary thing. It's just a quick jump to that line number. So if I go, for example, Alt F and I type in 65, enter, immediately goes 65. So it's a very quick way of getting to any line number you wish, which is mainly used for finding the line, the offending line of an error submitted by Nasm. It's shown that the cut and enter functions pay no regard to the horizontal cursor position. Often it's required, however, to split a line. The Alt up and Alt down arrow keys do just this. The remainder of the line to the right of the cursor will be moved to the next line up or down. However, if there are any characters in the target area, the line will not move. Let me demonstrate that. Okay, let's move to a position where we can show this. As you can see where the cursor is, I'll move my cursor to an arbitrary place. Now, I'm going to press Alt up arrow key. You can see what happens. All to the right of the cursor moves up one line. Now Alt down arrow key. Down arrow key. Now if I press down arrow key again, nothing, because we have characters on the target line. Now it's important to understand that if you have any characters on the target line, no matter what you have, let's put a character there, then moving up and moving the Alt up and down, no good. I'm pressing Alt up. Alt down works, but not Alt up. If I remove any character on the target line, then everything works accordingly. So that's how the split line works. Alt up and Alt down. The exception to all this is when Edlinpro mode, if you're in Edlinpro mode and the cursor is in the label column, no matter the horizontal cursor position within that column, the whole label will move. Let me demonstrate that. Okay, I'll place the cursor in the label column here, doesn't matter where, anywhere in the label column, and of course I'm in the Edlinpro mode, as we can see. So I'll press Alt down, and you can see it moves the label down. Alt up moves the label up. Of course it won't go over where there are characters. That's its original. And it doesn't matter where you place it in the column, wherever it is in the column it will work. If you're here, however, of course you're not in the label column, only to the right will work. So that's how it's modified for labels. Now, to move the cursor to the very last line of the script, we simply press Alt Y. And to move the cursor to the very first line of the script, we press Alt Z. Note, the horizontal cursor position is not changed. Wherever you have the cursor horizontally, that does not change. Okay, let me demonstrate that. First of all, let me place the cursor arbitrarily in the middle of the script. Okay, if I press Alt Y, takes you to the very first line. Alt Z takes you to the very last line, line 727. Alt Y, Alt Z. Very simple, and should be easy to remember. Okay, now let's talk about saving to disk and quitting Edlinpro. Alt S saves the whole script to disk, also appending the tokens info. If you remember, I mentioned this earlier in the video. Alt Q quits Edlinpro. Alt K saves, then quits. It does both jobs. When successfully saved, the not saved flag is reset as shown. If there is any unsaved data when Alt Q is pressed, a warning is given. Pressing Alt Q again, in other words twice in a row, quits anyway. So you can quit without saving by pressing Alt Q twice. Let me demonstrate that. First of all, I'll make some changes to the script. I'll just add some extra characters here, and you'll notice where the arrow is that we have our not saved flag set, meaning that what you have on the disk is not the same as what you have in your script. Now, in Edlinpro, this is very important. Every single character counts. The whole of the script is scanned and recorded whenever you load it in or whenever you save. And that scan is compared exactly with the script you have. So even a single character change has to be reset in order for it to be the same as what was on the disk. So as you can see at the top with the arrow, I've got the asterisk set, meaning it's a not save flag. Okay, get rid of that by getting rid of everything I've just added. So it's important to remember that. Let's make another change. Okay, so saving is simply you press Alt S, but I don't want to save this just now. What I want to demonstrate first is quitting. Now you'll notice the not save flag set, so when I press Alt Q, you can see there the indicator on the left says not saved. Now if you want to quit anyway, simply press Alt Q again and it will quit anyway without saving. But any other key press, no matter what it is, you're back on editing mode and you haven't saved. Okay. Now if I press Alt S, okay, now these 5 C's that I put in have been saved. So what's on disk is the same as what's in your file. Now if you remember, you can include additional scripts on the command line when you're running Edlinpro. If you have included at least one additional script, then pressing Alt W will swap to that script. Notice the not saved flag is a plus sign. This indicates Edlinpro will not write to it. In other words, Edlinpro treats it as a read-only file. Let me demonstrate that. Now if you remember, when I opened Edlinpro, I did include a couple of extra example scripts on the command line. So I should have at least 1 second script I can swap to. The very next script after I placed on the command line should be the one I can swap to. Now to do that, we have to press Alt W for swapping. So I press Alt W, and you can see there we've downloaded the second script. Not much to it, very small script, but nevertheless I called it example.2 Nasm. And you will notice there is a plus sign in the not saved. That plus sign means it cannot be saved. You cannot save it. Pressing Alt S has no effect. I'm pressing Alt S now, no effect. You cannot save these. You can only copy from them. You can cut, you can change them, but you cannot save them. Now if you remember, I actually had two extra scripts, an example 2 and an example 3. To get to the example 3, I press Alt X, and there's example 3. Okay, so pressing Alt X changes between those two. Not very exciting scripts, but they're here for demonstration only. But in both cases, example 2 and example 3, you will see there's a plus sign there in front of the name that indicates it's not writable. Edlinpro will not write to it. Now if I want to go back to my original script, we go back by Alt W. I can go this at any time. Alt W brings me back to my original script. Now the reason for all this, of course, would be to copy from another script and paste it into your own script. This is the most useful part of this. But in Edlinpro you must remember to include the names of those scripts on the command line when you invoke Edlinpro initially. Okay, that concludes the Edlinpro editor manual instructions. In the next video we'll make our first microElf executable, probably a simple hello world one, but nevertheless a lot of important points to show. ELF, by the way, means executable and linkable file format, used extensively in Linux and Unix systems. We'll also learn how to use the template, very important, the ELF header, how the ELF header is constructed, and to be aware of register values. These are what we're going to learn in the next video. The next video will also be a much shorter one. Okay, see you all then.